Please be advised, this episode does have content that some may find distressing. As always, listener discretion is advised and it is not suitable for anyone under the age of 13.
Hello, and welcome to It's Murder Up North. On Borough Road in Birkenhead there sits a marble stone inscribed with the words Diane Sindall, murdered August 2nd, 1986, because she was a woman. It sits beneath the trees on a grassy verge beside a busy thoroughfare. Thousands of people pass the spot each day. Some may pause, remembering the fate of a 21-year-old woman whose life was ended too soon. But Diane's was not the only high-profile case that occurred in the summer of 1986. On the 28th of July, estate agent Susie Lamplugh was simply doing her job when she left the office to carry out a viewing with a client, known only as Mr. Kipper. She was never seen again. Just 3 days later, on a bright sunlit afternoon, 15-year-old Dawn Ashworth opted to take a shortcut home, but a killer lay in wait. In Dawn's case, DNA profiling was utilised to link her murder to that of 15-year-old Linda Mann, which occurred in 1983. And this advancement in forensic science helped bring their killer, Colin Pitchfork, to justice. The day after Dawn's murder, another killing took place, which would lead to one of the worst miscarriages of justice in British legal history. One which would only be corrected by the advancements in DNA techniques pioneered 4 decades earlier. Join me as I delve into the murder of Diane Sindall, a case which for nearly 40 years was believed to have been solved, and the life of Peter Sullivan, who has spent 38 years residing behind bars, while the true killer may still be at large. In the previous episodes, I discussed how both Ernie Clark and Jeremy Bamber have protested their innocence. However, they have been unable to fully substantiate these claims. But for almost 40 years, Peter Sullivan, who had also resided in the cells of Wakefield Prison, had been eager to prove that he did not commit the murder for which he was convicted. And while many would argue that the evidence against Bamber and Clark was primarily circumstantial, it seemed in Peter's case that there was strong and compelling proof of guilt. In 2019, that all changed. But before I go into those details, let's start at the beginning. The first day of August 1986 was a reflection of how the rest of the month would be. The sky was consumed by grey clouds, bringing intermittent showers and lower than average temperatures. On this gloomy Friday morning, 21-year-old Diane Sindall awoke and proceeded to prepare to head out to work, with the reassurance that the following day she and her fiancé David would be going on a weekend away. Diane may have heard on the radio or seen in the newspapers appeals regarding the disappearance of Susie Lamplugh, but she may not have been aware that the previous night, over 140 miles away, the parents of Dawn Ashworth had become increasingly concerned when their 15-year-old daughter failed to return home. While the search for the teenager was underway in Leicestershire, for Diane it was just a normal day. She woke early and drove her distinctive blue van to her uncle's greengrocer's on Borough Road in Wallasey, where she ran a florist counter. Here the shy but amiable young woman was well liked by customers, and she loved creating her arrangements, with her uncle recalling that Diane worked hard to grow her business, with the 21-year-old who had trained for 2 years, often making trips to the flower market in the early hours of the morning to ensure she acquired the freshest blooms. At dinner time, the young woman headed to the bakery just a couple of doors away from the greengrocer's. As a frequent customer at the establishment, the staff had gotten to know Diane and her plans for her wedding, which had seen her scrimp and save in order to pay, not only for the nuptials, but the marital home she hoped to share with her 22-year-old fiancé, David Beatty. It was this determination to raise money for the wedding and the furnishing of their new home that had caused Diane to take a second job, working behind the bar at the Wellington Public House in Bebington. Having finished a day of working in the greengrocers at 5 o'clock, she stopped by the flat around the corner where David resided to spend some time with her future husband before setting off in her little blue Fiat van to start work at the pub by 8 p.m. Diane had been working at the Wellington for the last 6 months, and was remembered by Anne John, the manageress, as, quote, very popular with the customers, adding, she was a rather private person and would sometimes get embarrassed by the lads at the bar. Pulling up in the pub car park, the diligent employee set to work, serving customers, clearing tables and chatting with patrons and colleagues. Melvin John, the pub's licensee, recalled Diane disclosed her plans for the next few days with her fiancé, recalling that 21-year-old had said, quote, they were going away for a couple of days, with friends, possibly to a caravan in Wales. Melvin also recalled that Diane usually phoned home to let them know she was leaving work, but he didn't think she had time to do it that evening, and she had left work that Friday night, tired and hungry, with her voicing her intention to go into Birkenhead to get some chips before going to David's flat. By 11:45 that night, the patrons had been ushered out of the building, and Diane, in her little blue van, headed off down Bebington Road in the direction of Birkenhead. While Diane had been working at the pub, her future husband had been out celebrating the first anniversary of his car body repair shop, alongside his business partner and friend. He returned to his flat at 2:30 a.m. on Saturday morning to discover Diane wasn't there, but he just assumed the 21-year-old, who lived with her family, had simply opted to stay at their house for the night, rather than be in the flat alone. However, David's lack of concern was changed at 10 a.m. that morning, when he called Diane's parents. It quickly became apparent that she hadn't stayed at their home, leading to the cold realization that the 21-year-old was missing. While her family and fiancé contacted the police and initial efforts to trace Diane began, events developed elsewhere which would change the course of the investigation. Just after 12:30, a woman left her home roughly 2 miles away from David's flat to walk her dog. She headed along Borough Road in Birkenhead, a wide, 4-lane thoroughfare with a central reservation separating the two eastbound lanes from the westbound carriageway. Reaching a point opposite the Pyramid Shopping Centre and beside a bus stop, her dog tugged on the lead, guiding its owner across the grass verge towards a small alleyway running alongside a former hardware store. The animal seemed to be interested in something concealed within the overgrown weeds and rubble that occupied the alley, and curious, the woman stepped forward to take a closer look, but was horrified to discover the partially clothed and bloody body of a woman lying upon the weed-ridden cobbles. A post-mortem examination of the remains determined that the female had been struck repeatedly across the face with a heavy, blunt instrument, with such ferocity that she was killed almost instantly. The attacker had removed her lower items of clothing, while forcing her bra and t-shirt up about her neck, and it was apparent a sexual assault had taken place. There were signs that the slightly built Diane had attempted to fight off her attacker, but her assailant was able to overpower her. Anne John from the Wellington Public House referenced Diane's small frame, stating, someone with a bit more weight may have been able to handle it, but Diane was so thin. It was evident that a brutal killer was on the loose, and the police were eager to apprehend him swiftly. Detective Chief Inspector Jeff Harrison led the investigation, and officers set out searching the area where the body was found, but there was no signs of the woman's clothing or any of her belongings, nor was there anything which could be identified as the murder weapon. The search radiated out from the narrow alleyway, and just outside the access point, blood spots on the path suggested the initial attack occurred there, with the police also learning that a set of keys had been found on the grass verge close by at about 2 a.m. that morning. It wasn't long before these keys were linked to Diane's blue Fiat Fiorino van, which had an unpainted repair to its bonnet and was missing the near side mirror. The vehicle had been found parked outside an auto repair shop, just a 6-minute walk along Borough Road from where Diane's body was found. It was a discovery which led to more questions regarding what had occurred that night. What had caused her to leave the vehicle? Had she been followed from the pub, or had the van broken down, forcing her to walk? A press conference held on Monday the 4th of August 1986 sought to answer some of these questions, while also appealing for witnesses to aid in the investigation. The Liverpool Echo reported on the meeting, during which Detective Chief Inspector Jeff Harrison stated their speculation regarding what had occurred during Diane's journey home that night. He started by expressing the belief that due to Borough Road being a well-used thoroughfare, even at that time of night, there was likely individuals who may have seen the slightly built, 5'6" Diane walking along the pavement, wearing blue jeans, lime green shoes, and a green and white spotted t-shirt, carrying a brown leather patchwork handbag. He went on to state what they had established regarding Diane's final moments. DCI Harrison said, "We know Diane drove her van at 11:45 p.m. from Bebington to Birkenhead and stopped at pedestrian traffic lights on Borough Road, near the roundabout under the tunnel flyover. She got out of the van, locked the doors, and was seen walking on the pavement nearby. This is the last sighting we have of her." He went on to inform the press that Diane had suffered a brutal attack, which involved a sexual assault, telling them, quote, "We can confirm that apart from the savage attack to the girl, there are other signs of a sexual attack to the body. At this stage, we do not wish to go any further into that." It had been noted that the assailant had removed all of the 21-year-old's clothing, save for her bra and green and white spotted t-shirt, which had been pulled up over her shoulders. It was also reported that Diane was still wearing certain pieces of jewellery, including her engagement ring. The rest of her garments had been removed and were reported to be missing, alongside the earrings Diane had been wearing, and her brown leather patchwork handbag, which contained a burgundy purse. The latter was believed to have £60 in cash within it. Addressing why Diane had left her vehicle, DCI Harrison stated that it was possible the van had either broken down or run out of fuel, and this had prompted the 21-year-old to abandon it and set off walking. Perhaps she intended to catch a bus, or make her way to a petrol station located roughly a 20-minute walk along Borough Road. Commenting on this potential scenario, DCI Harrison stated, "It is possible Diane was a desperately unlucky girl who might have lived had her van kept going." It was during the press conference that an appeal was made for a young woman said to be aged between 18 or 19 who was wearing a yellow jacket and yellow trousers to come forwards. Witnesses had reported seeing this girl sat on a bench near where Diane was killed, with it being stated that she was crying and had reportedly been raped. Police appealed for a couple of individuals who were seen comforting the girl in yellow to come forwards, but also stated that the assault had not yet been reported, and they requested that the young girl, whom they conceded was possibly frightened or embarrassed, should come forwards to speak of what she had experienced. DCI Harrison told the press, "We know that a girl was on the bench at the bus stop at 12:30 on Friday night. She was joined by another girl and a youth. 2 other youths walking past have told us they heard her shout, 'I've been raped.' It is vital that we find this girl and the other couple who got into a taxi with her. Alongside this sighting of the clearly distressed young lady in yellow, police had also been approached by several women who informed them of previous unreported sexual assaults that had occurred in the area. Following the appeal, a 17-year-old girl came forward to speak to police, telling them she had gone to Birkenhead with a couple of friends, but during the night she had been separated from them. At around 10 to 12 that Friday night, she had been walking alone near the corner of Clifton Road and Borough Road, just 100 metres away from where Diane would park her van. The teenager, described by the press as a slightly built blonde, told detectives that she was grabbed from behind by a bare-armed man, who dragged her onto the grass verge where she was indecently assaulted. She was able to get free from him, and the man ran away. Her friends later found her sobbing on a bench at the bus stop, close to where Diane died. However, the 17-year-old was unable to provide police with a description of the man who had attacked her. She was able to recall an individual who had also been seen in the vicinity of the crime scene that night, a man the teenager described as being scruffy in appearance, with a deformed eye. This individual was witnessed passing by 3 key locations along the route taken by Diane, and this made it essential that he was tracked down. Meanwhile, the case was garnering national attention. Mr. Andrew Pearce, a member of the European Parliament, used Diane's death to rationalise the reinstatement of the death penalty. Yet many years later, this case would end up being an argument against capital punishment. 5 days after the death of Diane, her family and fiancé gave an impassioned interview to the Liverpool Echo, describing the 21-year-old's infectious laugh which brightened their lives, with her mother Wendy stating, "The house is so empty without her. We just expect her to walk through the door at any minute. She had such an infectious laugh, anyone who heard it would start laughing themselves. That is what we miss." Diane's father Brian spoke of the man who had taken their daughter from them, stating, "He cannot be human, he is a monster." The distraught father added, "Somewhere is this animal, or thing, that has no heart or feelings. The agony is that we could walk past him and not know. He could have been in our street, anywhere. You hear a footstep behind you and wonder to yourself, could it be, could it be?" During the interview, the family revealed the heartbreaking moment they viewed Diane's body, with Diane Sindall telling the Echo, "Diane looked at peace when we saw her. Until yesterday, none of us could really believe she had gone. To think, if there had just been a cupful more of petrol in the car, or if she had walked the other way, she would have lived." Wendy Sindall closed the interview by appealing to anyone who may be harbouring the culprit to turn him in, stating, "I would know if my son had done this. The killer must have had bloodstains on him." As the family tried to come to terms with Diane's death, the police were still eager to trace the scruffy man described by the 17-year-old girl, with them revealing further details including an encounter between the teenager and this individual, whom she claimed made a rude remark towards her as he walked by her along Borough Road in the direction of the alley where Diane was murdered. Other witnesses placed the man outside the auto repair shop where Diane would park her van, meaning it was possible he witnessed her walking away from the vehicle. To aid in tracing him, the police issued a more detailed description, which stated that the man had an unkempt appearance. He was wearing a jacket and trousers, was roughly 40 years old, and stood about 5 foot 4 inches tall. They added that he had a tick in his right eye. But this was not the only male they wanted to speak to, as the teenage girl also recalled a younger man who less than 5 minutes before she was assaulted had attempted to chat her up as she was leaving the Central Railway Station. This mousy-haired individual was described as being around 17 years old and was about 5 foot 6 inches tall, wearing a light coloured shirt and jumper. Alongside this, the police were also eager to speak to 2 more men seen in the area that night. They had been observed having a conversation near the Pelican Crossing on Borough Road, but had not yet been traced. Given the number of potential witnesses that were in the area that night, police were hopeful that these individuals would be able to provide details which could lead to the killer. In an attempt to encourage more people to come forwards, a reconstruction of Diane's last known movements was staged, with a policewoman portraying the 21-year-old. 31-year-old WPC Trubshaw, dressed in clothing similar to that worn by Diane that fateful night, retraced the route taken by the 21-year-old. From the moment she left the Wellington pub in Bebington, driving her blue Fiat Farino van, parking the vehicle in the same spot outside the auto repair centre, then walking to the point where Diane took her final breath. The reconstruction generated several new leads, with witnesses describing a number of individuals who were in the area that Friday night. One such person police were eager to speak to was a man seen arguing with a woman who matched Diane's description. This incident was witnessed by an individual driving past the alleyway where the murder occurred at around 12:15. Detective Superintendent Tom Baxter, who was now leading the investigation, elaborated further on this sighting, telling the press, "The girl was seen walking backwards and the man was walking forwards. There appeared to be some sort of banter or argument going on. The motorist drove on and did not see any more." He went on to state that this man, whom they were keen to speak to, had a slim 5 foot 10 inches frame, with dark, short hair, wearing a brown leather jacket, beneath which was a dark coloured shirt. There were also reports of a man placed in a location between Diane's abandoned van and the crime scene. This male was said to have been looking through a hole in a fence which ran alongside Borough Road, yet upon being seen he had fled across a patch of wasteland. This man was said to be wearing a light blue, short-sleeved shirt, and was approximately 5 foot 7 in height. Police also appealed for 2 girls believed to be in their late teens to come forwards. They were witnessed walking on Borough Road just before midnight. One of them was said to have short blonde hair and wore a white dress, while her companion, who was slightly smaller in height, was wearing a pink dress. Another witness recalled seeing a vehicle parked opposite the crime scene outside the Pyramid Shopping Centre. The witness claimed the car was a white Ford Sierra Saloon, and due to it having a large aerial, police suspected it may have been a taxi. Given the proximity of this car to the scene, officers asked for the driver to get in touch. During their inquiries, the police had also spoken to the driver of the number 87 bus, who had been on his last run of the night along a route which went along Borough Road. While the police had been able to track down 2 of the passengers, there were another pair who were on the bus that night who police wanted to talk to. To have so many potential witnesses made it seem as though this case could be solved with ease. But it also seems poignant that so many people were traversing along Borough Road that night, either by foot or car, yet Diane would die in a dark, desolate alley, just feet away from where the pedestrians and vehicles were passing by. It must have been, and still is, a terrifying prospect, and for some of Diane's co-workers at the Wellington pub, the fear of a man lurking in the shadows made them leave their job, concerned over their safety, given that they, just like Diane, would have to make their way home late at night while the killer was still on the loose. It was a particular worry for one such co-worker, who had been living in a flat not far from where Diane died, with the murder prompting the individual to move out. While the police anticipated hearing from the individuals mentioned, they were finally able to speak to the Scruffy Man, as he had been dubbed by the press. In the 2 weeks since the murder, this man had been in Chester and claimed he had been unaware that he was being sought in relation to the crime. Unfortunately for the police, despite admitting he had been in the area that night, the man went on to state that he did not see anything untoward. As one potential lead ended in disappointment, another seemed more promising. When a couple out walking their dog on Sunday the 17th of August 1986 came across a heap of burnt clothes, amongst which was a bank paying-in book in Diane Sindall's name. The wooded area known as Bidston Hill now became the focus of the investigation. The popular beauty spot, located roughly 2.5 miles away from where Diane was killed, is a sprawling 100-acre site consisting of fields, dense shrubland, winding paths and woods, making it a challenging place to search for potential clues. The burned garments were located just 25 yards away from Viner Road North, which ran alongside the woods, and close to a pedestrian road bridge. Amongst the items found were a pair of jeans, a handbag and a brown leather coat. The latter was deemed to be of some significance, given that the man seen arguing with a woman on Borough Road had been wearing a similar jacket. As for the other items, these would need to be reviewed by Diane's family to confirm they belonged to the 21-year-old before being sent to Chorley Forensics Laboratory for further investigation. Eager to discern when the items were deposited at the site and where the garments, particularly the jackets, may have come from, DS Tom Baxter told the press, "Someone tried to burn these items on the spot, and there must have been quite a fire. The flames scorched shrubbery and bushes to a height of about 6 feet. We want people who think they saw a fire recently or spotted someone acting suspiciously to get in touch." Forensic experts seem to think the clothes had been there for some time, and DS Baxter went on to state that the killer was, quote, "certainly trying very hard to hide the evidence." It was the brown suede leather coat which the police were most keen to trace the owner of, as this one piece of evidence may lead them to the killer. Another potential clue recovered from Bidston Hill was a piece of paper which appeared to be a shopping list written in blue ink detailing a selection of gifts and their recipients, causing investigators to believe this may have been for Christmas, yet ruled out that it was Diane's handwriting. Police questioned whether this had been dropped by the perpetrator, given its close proximity to the charred garments. As such, they released an image of the list and the names, which were Chris Manson, Mum, Linda, Michael, Carol, Peter, Ian, Mark and Anita. With this discovery made public, police urged anyone who recognised the group of names to come forwards. They also appealed for individuals to contact them who had been seen on Borough Road but had not yet been in touch with the police. Amongst them was a male who had been standing beside the bus shelter close to the junction of Clifton Road and Borough Road. He was said to be well built, roughly 6 foot tall, with straight collar-length black hair. The witness recalled the man appeared to be in his mid-20s and was wearing a white, long-sleeved shirt and dark trousers. This male had been seen in the area at around midnight, and it was alleged by those who walked by him that he would step back into the shadows as they approached. Given the proximity of this man to the location where the girl in yellow was assaulted, it was important the police tracked him down. As such, he was one of 2 men the police would release an e-fit of, with the second being described as medium build in his late 40s. This man, with swept back, dark, greasy hair and a ruddy complexion, was seen walking towards Bebington along Borough Road. He was holding a white carrier bag and wearing a light-coloured suit. Another male, said to be in his 40s, was seen pushing a Yamaha 50cc motorcycle near to Whetstone Lane, roughly 200 yards away from the crime scene. It was noted that he was wearing a peakless, white, open-faced crash helmet. 3 women were also asked to contact the police. They were said to be in their mid to late 20s and may have also seen Diane, or her attacker. The trio had been seen at around midnight outside the auto repair centre, beside which Diane had parked her van. A workman carrying out renovations inside the building noticed the 3 women looking through the window and laughing. Officers were also eager to trace a woman who shortly after midnight was seen sitting on a bench close to the alleyway where Diane died. This individual had long straight black hair and was roughly 35 to 45 years of age. She had been wearing a dark blue jacket and skirt. It was believed this same woman was witnessed walking along Borough Road shortly afterwards. This time she was observed pulling a shopping trolley behind her. Alongside this woman, the owner of the white Ford Sierra, which had been parked in a lay-by close to Whetstone Lane, was still being sought. Detectives also renewed their appeal for the man in the dark brown leather jacket, who had been witnessed by a taxi driver arguing with a woman who matched Diane's description. However, they had also determined that the brown coat found amidst the charred garments at Bidston Hill was not connected to this individual, nor to the crime, having learned that the coat had been stolen from a car and was likely dumped in the area. This was also the case with the discarded shopping list. With this discovery, another lead disintegrated, and it must have been so frustrating for the police, especially when they had so many witnesses, yet no one on that busy thoroughfare saw what occurred. Detective Superintendent Tom Baxter spoke to the press in a renewed appeal. First, he thanked those who had come forwards, noting that over 3,000 people had contacted the police, but he would go on to state this was a brightly lit area, and also comparatively busy at the time. We feel certain that there are other people who probably think their information may not be important, who can help. Describing the potential offender, the detective continued, "The attacker was probably dishevelled and certainly bloodstained after this killing, and we believe that there is someone who knows who he is. We cannot discount the possibility that he will strike again, and I am urging anyone who could help to call me in the strictest confidence." He also conceded that they were not certain what had prompted Diane to head in the direction she had, proposing a number of scenarios, including that the 21-year-old had set off to get fuel from a petrol station further along Borough Road, or she was intending to find a phone box to call for help. Alternatively, she may have been making her way to a friend's home, with it being known that one of her fellow barmaids lived in the area. It had been a month since the murder, and aside from the plethora of witnesses who saw nothing and speculations regarding why Diane was taking the route she did, it seemed the police were no closer to finding her killer. This lack of momentum prompted the decision to turn to the BBC's Crime Watch programme, hopeful that the show's national airing would propel the case forwards. While the police saw this as a positive move, the episode scheduled for the 18th of September filled Diane's father with dread at the thought of having to see his daughter's final moments recreated. The bereaved father told the Liverpool Daily Post, "I hope that the programme does not have to go out. It would be very hard for us to watch, but it is something which we will have to do." On the 18th of September 1986, the dreaded episode was aired. Crime Watch, who had spent 3 days filming in Birkenhead, had a 10-minute segment dedicated to the case, during which viewers were shown the 21-year-old's movements on Friday, August the 1st. They recreated Diane going about her normal routine, heading to the grocery store where her florist counter was located, going for lunch at the local bakery, and her working at the Wellington pub. It then recounted her final steps. Her little blue van coming to a halt outside the auto repair shop, where two men were working. They observed through the window her exit the vehicle and begin walking alongside the flyover towards Birkenhead. Gary Lamb, the driver of the 87 bus, who was undertaking the last run of the night, recalled seeing Diane walking swiftly, seeming to search in her bag as she repeatedly glanced over her shoulder. Were these the glances of someone looking to see if a bus was coming, or had Diane become aware that someone was following her? The next sighting was by a taxi driver, who thought he saw a young couple heading home from a night out who had gotten into an argument. This was the male in the brown leather coat, but given the description of the woman seen with him, the police had to wonder whether this was Diane's assailant. The final sighting of a woman resembling Diane was made by a couple in their car, as they turned from Borough Road onto Whetstone Lane, observing her standing on the roadside as though waiting to cross. It was proposed that the attack occurred shortly after this, with Diane being dragged or forced back up Borough Road in the direction of her vehicle. But just 200 yards from where she was last seen, her assailant forced her off the pavement and into the alleyway, the darkness of which concealed his deeds from anyone passing by, while the blows to Diane's head were believed to have incapacitated her instantaneously, meaning no one would have heard her call out or cry. During the segment, the discovery of the burned clothing on Bidston Hill was also discussed, and it was revealed that a male had been seen in the woods the day after the murder, which was when police believed the fire had been lit. With such a detailed reconstruction being aired on national television, the police anticipated a flood of calls. What they received was just a trickle, with only one promising contact from a female caller who was said to be in a distressed state, and she ended the call before giving the handler any information. Believing she may know something key to the investigation, a plea was made during the 11:30 recap show for the woman to call them back. I cannot find anything definitive to say this caller contacted the police again, although some reports claim that this call was made by someone close to the perpetrator. Despite the mediocre response to the reconstruction, the police only needed one clue, which resulted in an individual being arrested 5 days after the Crime Watch appeal aired. The Liverpool Echo reported that the arrest of the 29-year-old in a council house located in the centre of Birkenhead was instigated due to a tip-off received after the televised appeal, and that the police had been granted an additional 36 hours to hold him for questioning. It was news which brought some relief to the family, as Diane's father had expressed his wish that they would see some sort of resolution prior to his daughter's funeral, which was held on the 3rd of October 1986. With Diane being laid to rest, the focus now turned to the man responsible for her murder and his pending trial. Join me next time as I cover the trial of Diane's killer.
So in the meantime, keep an eye on those shadows.